He was the hunter who became the hunted, stalked by the most feared pilots in the world, in a sky he couldn't see. Everyone thought the darkness was his enemy. But what if it was his only ally? What happens when innovation meets desperation in the dead of night? Get ready for a story of courage, cutting-edge technology, and the silent guardian that changed the war. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this to you. The Ghost in the Dark. The English countryside slept under a blanket of blackout conditions, but the airbase at RAF Station Scorton was wide awake. For Lieutenant Elias Vance, the night was a living thing. It smelled of damp grass, cold metal, and high-octane fuel. He ran a gloved hand along the wing of his aircraft, not a sleek fighter, but something far more sinister, a Northrop P-61 Black Widow. Its matte black paint absorbed the scant moonlight, making it look less like a machine and more like a jagged piece of the night itself, torn loose and given a deadly purpose. "Nervous, Captain," a voice chirped behind him. Sergeant Chloe Ridley, his radar operator, was already hoisting herself into the rear compartment of the Widow's bulbous, twin-boomed body. At just 22, she was a prodigy, one of the few who could truly read the glowing green pips and lines of the new SCR-720 radar set. It was a secret weapon, an electronic eye that could see in absolute darkness. Elias managed a tight smile. "Just thinking about the Welcome Committee, Ridley." The Welcome Committee was the Luftwaffe's Nachtjagdgeschwader 1, the Night Hunters. German pilots like Helmut Lent and Werner Streib were aces a dozen times over, masters of finding and destroying British bombers in the dark. They flew specially modified Junkers Ju 88s and Dornier 217s, equipped with their own primitive radar and upward-firing cannons, nicknamed Schrage Music, jazz music. It was a lethal ambush tactic. Their mission tonight was simple on paper: protect the stream of returning RAF Lancaster bombers. In reality, it was a desperate game of blind man's bluff at 20,000 feet. The Widow was new, untested in major combat. Many of the old guard in command thought it was a complicated death trap. Inside the cockpit, Elias went through the pre-flight checks with his gunner, Staff Sergeant Marcus Bull Brennan, a hulking man from Chicago who was fiercely protective of his four-gun dorsal turret. The twin Pratt and Whitney engines roared to life, a sound that vibrated deep in Elias's chest. Soon, they were climbing into the abyss. The world shrunk to the red glow of the instrument panel, the hum of the radar, and Chloe's calm voice in his headset. "Skylark Leader, this is Nightcrawler. We are your umbrella. Report positions, over." Static crackled, then a strained British voice. "Nightcrawler, Skylark Leader. Bogies in the area. We've already lost 2. They're picking us off like ducks in a gallery." "Where the hell are you?" Elias's jaw tightened. This was the pressure. Men were dying, and they were his responsibility. "Chloe," he asked, his voice low. Scanning, nothing but friendlies." "Wait." Her voice sharpened. "Contact. Low, 5 o'clock. 2,000 yards. Closing fast. It's not one of ours." The tension in the cockpit spiked. This was it. The hunter had arrived. "Confirm bogey, Chloe," Elias said, his hands gripping the controls, every sense screaming. Below them, the Lancaster bombers droned on, oblivious, sitting ducks in the moonlit haze. "I confirm, Lieutenant." Chloe's voice was steady, but edged with urgency. "Target is climbing. Speed 280. He's lining up on the tail end, Charlie." Elias shoved the throttles forward. The Black Widow surged ahead, its engines swallowing the silence of the night. He was flying blind, entirely dependent on the young woman in the back. He had to trust a blip on a screen. "Bull, stand by," Elias ordered. "Turret is live, Lieutenant." "Just give me a target," Brennan's gruff voice replied. The theory was simple. Chloe would guide Elias into a parallel position behind the enemy fighter using only her radar commands. Once they were close enough, Elias would visually identify it and Brennan in his top turret would have a clear shot. It was a revolutionary, untested dance of technology and teamwork. "Easy, right? Hold. Now descend gently," Chloe instructed, her eyes glued to the shimmering green scope. "You should be 500 yards behind and slightly above. Do you have visual?" Elias strained his eyes. peering into the oppressive darkness. For a heart-stopping moment, he saw nothing. Then a silhouette, the distinct, cruciform shape of a Junkers Ju-88, its pale blue underside barely visible against the black earth below. It was creeping up underneath a Lancaster, its Schrage music cannons angled upward, ready to shred the bomber's vulnerable belly. The German pilot was a professional, smooth and patient. He had no idea death was hovering behind him. "Visual! I have visual!" Elias hissed. "Bull, target is Ju-88, 50 yards dead ahead and below. He's fixated on the Lancaster. Light him up." The world erupted in sound and light. Brennan opened fire, the 4.50 caliber machine guns in his turret spitting brilliant orange tracers that arced through the night, stitching a line across the Ju-88's wing and engine. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The German pilot, shocked from his focused hunt, broke hard to the left. But it was too late. Fuel from a ruptured line ignited, and the Ju-88 became a sudden, terrible sun in the darkness, illuminating the terrified faces of the Lancaster crew for a split second before it plummeted downward, a comet of fire and metal. A wave of silence washed over the intercom, broken only by the drone of their own engines. They had done it. The theory was real. Then, Chloe's voice cut through, sharp with alarm. "Elias, break left. Now! Now! Now!" A torrent of cannon fire ripped through the space where they had just been. Tracer rounds glowed like angry hornets. A second Ju-88, unseen, unscoped, had been trailing its wingman. The German ace had used his comrade as bait. They weren't the hunters anymore. The Widow was now the prey. Elias wrenched the control yoke, throwing the heavy Black Widow into a violent corkscrew turn. G-forces slammed him into his seat, and his vision tunneled. The unseen attacker's cannon shells screamed past the canopy, so close he could feel the concussive thump of air. "Chloe, where is he? Talk to me!" he yelled, fighting the controls. I lost him. "The scope is a mess!" she shouted back, frustration and fear cracking her professional calm. The sudden, violent maneuver had made the radar display a chaotic swirl of ground clutter and fading echoes. Their technological advantage was gone. They were back in the Stone Age, two blind giants clubbing at each other in the dark. The German pilot was good, terrifyingly good. He knew his aircraft intimately, flying not by instruments but by instinct. He stayed tight on their tail, using their own fiery exhaust as a beacon. Another burst of cannon fire peppered the air to their right. "He's feeling us out," Brennan growled from his turret, desperately trying to get a bead on their pursuer. "This guy's no rookie." Elias's mind raced. The P-61 was big, but it was surprisingly agile for its size. Its advantage was speed in a dive and, theoretically, a better rate of roll. But theory meant nothing against experience. He had an idea. A dangerous, probably stupid idea. "Chloe, when I give the word, I need you to kill the running lights. For 1 second. Just one. Sir, that's... Just do it. Bull, the second the lights go out, I'm going to brake hard starboard and climb. You fire a 3-second burst straight back on my mark. Don't aim. Just lay down a wall of lead." It was a gamble. They'd be flying completely blind for a heart-stopping moment with a predator on their tail. But darkness was their identity. It was time to use it. He took a deep breath. "Ready. Now." The tiny formation lights on the Widow's wings and tail vanished, plunging them into absolute invisibility. At the same instant, Elias stomped on the right rudder and hauled back on the stick. The G-forces returned, crushing them. Behind them, Brennan unleashed a torrent of tracers into empty space. For a long, terrifying second, nothing happened. Then, a triumphant shout from Brennan. "You got him! He overshot! He's turning in front of us! I see him!" The German pilot, momentarily blinded by the sudden disappearance of his target and confronted with a wall of seemingly aimed fire, had instinctively broken left and down, flashing directly across the Widow's nose. He presented his profile for a perfect, fleeting second. It was the chance they needed. The hunter was exposed. The Ju-88 was a stark silhouette against the slightly less dark sky. The element of surprise, that sacred advantage of the night fighter, had been violently reversed. "I'm on him!" Brennan yelled, the hydraulic whine of a turret spinning up filling the intercom. Another burst of .50 caliber fire reached out, but the German ace was already reacting, snapping into a diving turn that made the tracers slip harmlessly past his tail. "He's diving for the deck," Elias called out, shoving the throttles to the firewall and pushing the Widow's nose down. The engines screamed in protest as they gave chase. The race was on, a plummeting descent through layers of cloud from 20,000 feet. "He's trying to lose us in the ground clutter," Chloe reported, her voice focused once more as she wrestled with the radar, trying to filter out the confusing returns from the Earth rushing up to meet them. "I'm losing the signal. You'll have to get visual again." The world outside was a blur of wind noise and vertigo. Elias kept his eyes locked on the shadow below, slowly gaining as the heavier, more powerful Widow ate into the Ju-88's lead. They were descending through 5,000 feet now, the patchwork of fields and villages of occupied France becoming terrifyingly distinct. The German pilot was desperate, jinking left and right, but the Widow clung to him. Brennan fired another short burst, a warning shot that peppered the ground ahead of the fleeing aircraft. Then, the unexpected revelation. The Ju-88 did not return fire. Not a single shot. "He's not shooting back," Brennan said, confusion in his voice. "His tail gun is silent. I think he's out of ammo. He used it all on his initial attack run. This changed everything. The fearsome predator was toothless. He wasn't fighting. He was running for his life." Elias felt a strange pang of empathy. This was no longer about killing, it was about survival. His orders were to protect the bombers, which he had done. The German was fleeing the scene. The tactical mission was accomplished. But could he just let him go? The man in that cockpit was one of the aces who had terrorized the night skies for years. Letting him escape meant he would live to kill again tomorrow. "Do we finish it, Lieutenant?" Brennan asked, his tone grim. The turret was still trained on the vulnerable aircraft below. Elias watched the Ju-88, weaving just above the treetops, a pilot fighting for every inch of his life. He thought of the men in the Lancasters, of the terror of being hunted. He thought of the cold calculus of war. He made his decision. "Bull, hold your fire." "Sir." "Hold your fire. Chloe, mark this position. We're breaking off." He pulled back on the yoke, ending the deadly chase. The Black Widow climbed away, leaving the shocked and undoubtedly bewildered German pilot to escape into the night. They had won. Not just the fight, but a piece of their own humanity. The return to Skorten was a quiet affair. The sun was just beginning to tinge the eastern horizon with a pale, watery light, turning the night's blackness into a soft, gray gloom. As Elias guided the battle-weary Black Widow onto the runway, he could see the ground crew already gathering, having heard the preliminary radio report. Shutting down the engines felt like waking from a dream. The sudden silence was deafening. He sat for a moment, utterly drained, the adrenaline receding and leaving a hollow, shaky feeling in its place. Climbing out of the cockpit, his legs felt like rubber. Chloe met him on the wing, her face pale but her eyes bright with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She didn't say a word, just offered a small, knowing nod. Brennan clapped him on the shoulder, a gesture that said more than any speech could. The intelligence officer was waiting for them in the debriefing hut. "We intercepted German communications after you engaged," the officer said, a hint of a smile on his face. "It's chaos on their end. They're reporting a new, massive American night fighter. They say it appears from nowhere, strikes with incredible accuracy, and then vanishes. They have no idea what hit them. They're calling it Der Nachtvex, the Night Witch." Elias looked at Chloe and Brennan. They hadn't just survived, they had become a legend. They had weaponized the unknown. Weeks later, a captured German pilot from another squadron was being interrogated. He spoke of a new fear spreading through the Nachtjagerschwader. The rules had changed. The night sky, once their private hunting ground, was no longer safe. There was something else out there, something silent, deadly and utterly unpredictable. The aces, once bold and aggressive, were now hesitant. They looked over their shoulders. They second-guessed shadows. The mere rumor of the Black Widow's presence could disrupt an entire mission. Elias Vance, Chloe Ridley, and Marcus Brennan hadn't just won a single dogfight. They had sown a seed of doubt. They had taken the greatest strength of their enemy, their mastery of the darkness, and turned it into their greatest fear. Standing by his aircraft the next evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Elias felt a different kind of chill. The night was falling again, but it felt less like an abyss and more like a cloak. He was no longer just a pilot following orders. He was the keeper of a secret. He was the whisper in the dark, the unexpected challenge, the embodiment of perseverance emerging from the shadows. The war was far from over, but a new chapter had begun, written in black paint and guided by a ghostly green light. The widow was ready to hunt again.